Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ball Caps and Bagpipes. First episode of season 2. I am the Glasgow Comets, John McKellar.
And I'm Jason Durr, a Baseball Scotland Hall of Famer.
Baseball Scotland Hall of Famer and former president of the league, Jason. Today, let's talk Mookie Betts, let's talk David Price, let's talk the Red Sox and Dodgers.
Yeah, to say, I have to say, it's pretty unprecedented to see someone like Mookie Betts traded in their prime to save a few dollars, especially with a club like the Red Sox with deep pockets.
Yeah.
I guess it'd be like trading Aaron Judge because the Yankees could no longer afford him.
Yeah, it's completely insane. They are still one of the best. They still have Chris Sale. They have one of the most potent lineups, top to bottom, in Major League Baseball. What could be the possible reason?
So this would have been the third year into a luxury tax, and I think they would have paid. I think it's twice as much as they went over, and I think it's set at like 200 or 210. I don't know the exact number, but it's a third year in a row they've been over. So the luxury tax would have been a huge penalty for them. But even saying that, it would have been that much for the deep pockets of the Red Sox. It's sad to see that baseball is being controlled by the economics now instead of just having some kind of crazy owner who just wants to see a World Series win. But that's the way it works these days. Yeah, it was supposed to make things competitive, so you wouldn't have teams like the Yankees overspending, and then again versus teams like Tampa Bay, so you're talking about the ceiling and the floor there, and in theory that would keep people from not doing that, and it would allow teams like Miami, Tampa Bay to be still competitive and retain their own players, but it's clearly not the case.
How successful do you think it's been over the last 20, 23 years?
Big teams are always going to spend big. I think this is the first time you've seen the top three teams, Boston, New York, and LA, actually take it seriously as a spending limit. And I can understand from their perspective, they've got shareholders now. It's not just one guy that owns a team. It's a conglomerate of various people. And about the team for, obviously they see their team win, but, I think the bottom part of it is they want to see a profit. So, if they can save $20 million, it looks good in the bank balance.
Yep, I believe it was $27.5 million was Mookie Betts' salary that he achieved in arbitration. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, and it's just sad because you win a World Series, that 27 is pocket change. That's a couple more beers and concession stands in the playoffs. It's really not that much.
This is correct, and not only did Mookie Betts get moved, but David Price as well, who was on a pretty. I think he's still owed $96 million.
But I think it was offset. I think the Red Sox did send quite a bit of money to go head over to the Dodgers. And the Dodgers didn't even give that much up. None of their top prospects were even touched. So I don't even really know what the Red Sox got from this. It's a pretty head-scratching
move. I know that there is a bit of a controversy about one of the players that they've ended up with. I think he's had some kind of brush in with the law in recent times, and a lot of fans have kind of had a bit of a backlash against that. I believe he's been given, is it Brock Holt's number, which has caused it to be even more exasperated. Now, this trade was originally a 3-team deal. It took a while to go through. At one point it collapsed and it was back on again. So Minnesota were identified as the third team. To your kind of understanding, how did this process end up coming about? What happened that caused this to collapse in the first place? And how have the Red Sox and Dodgers managed to get over the line?
Well, it was the Twins were the third part, and it was their prospect is like a 20-year-old fireballer. He's had arm problems before, and so they must have had the medical and looked at it and said, there's some more red flags here. We're not sure quite so much about him. But then he ended up going to the trade anyways. So I think they just added another player to it. The Twins going all in. They get Kenta Maeda out of it. I think the Twins, they have a pretty potent lineup now, and now they have, another name that we can throw out there that will help them.
Could it be said on any level that the Twins are the winner out of this deal, based on the fact that Mookie Betts will be hitting free agency at the end of the year? David Price appears to be on the decline. Would you agree with that maybe the Minnesota Twins have kind of low-key won this whole thing?
I think they snuck in there, but then you're talking about the second best player in baseball outside of Mike Trout. So the Dodgers are going to, have an insane lineup.
This is true. I think the Dodgers are certainly the runaway favourites for the National League Championship, quite possibly favourites for the World Series. You've got Kershaw, you've got Walker Buehler, you've got Cody Bellinger on that team, and other insane names. So yeah, it's theirs to lose, I think, at least in the National League side.
I think it was disappointing that the Padres were in there for quite a bit, and they could have put some. I don't know why they pulled out, but they signed Machado. They've got Fernando Tatis Jr. I think they've traded away some guys. I don't understand what the GM's thinking there, and why they couldn't have put a package together to get Mookie to go to San Diego and see how it worked for a year. I mean, gosh, a year of Mookie Betts for a couple of prospects they had in the system probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And at least they would have made, look like they were going all in instead of kind of going, well, we're happy with what you have, and maybe some growth would help. But I mean, how do you let someone like that go to your division rival?
Now, do you think that maybe Mookie and perhaps his agent, though, have had a say in this? Obviously, Mookie, former MVP, he's in a walk year. He's looking at free agency at the end of 2020. Do you think that maybe he wants to put up big numbers in a big market like LA to drive his price up? And that might have been why the Padres could have ended up not being able to pull the trigger.
I don't think it's that at all. I think it's still Mookie Betts. I still think he gets $40 million a year. Mike Trout's contract is probably going to be the floor for Mookie Betts because he gave the Angels a hometown discount. So I don't think it matters. I think even if he has a rubbish year, I think he still gets $40 million a year next year, and people bet on him to bounce out, and there'll be some opt out after like year 3, and but it will be a 8-year, probably $400 million contracts. So.
Yeah, that MVP on his resume, I think, is going to speak volumes in any contract negotiations. There's been a lot of talk about what being a former MVP means for a player that's entering negotiations recently, but we'll touch on that another time. Okay, so let's move on then to Scottish baseball. Today, there was a great announcement by the president of the league, Paul Convoy. The schedule announcement, always one of the most anticipated points of the year. That came with some sad news, though. Unfortunately, the Edinburgh Giants will not be fielding a team this year, so it will only be the 7 teams this season, including the Tayport Breakers. Sad to see the Edinburgh Giants go.
Yeah, it's always see a team folding sad. It's sad. I mean, you don't want to see that. You want to see growth every year. But I can totally understand where you're coming from, because you start in April and you've got 15 guys that are keen, and then by end of May you've got 8 guys that are keen, and you're begging guys to show, and then come July you've got 5 people and a bucket of balls, and you're begging people to come play. So it happens. So, by going from 3 to 2, it probably helps a number of numbers to be a little bit stronger. And then hopefully they bounce back the following year, and you get that 3rd team back up and running again.
Now, you mentioned there how the unintended consequence of the Giants leaving the league for the time being, that strengthens the numbers of both the Devils and Cannons. Do you see those 2 teams becoming more potent from a quality standpoint, just based off of, by default, ending up with some of the best Giants players? Their kind of mainstays will end up probably playing for either one of those.
Now, if I understand correctly, there was quite a few Giants who left towards the middle of the season or not. So you're going to miss your Adam Murphy out of there, his leadership. So, the guys that were really solid, they'll fill in some gaps here and there. And hopefully just it doesn't impact the rookies, because that's what it's really about, is growing the sport and getting those young guys into the game and making sure they're getting plenty of playing time.
That's a great point, man. It's a great point, and one that I hadn't really thought of. Will that impact Edinburgh for the next 3-5 years if there are rookies who are trying to get into games and learn the sport, and they're not able to do that because there's too many places that are full up with these established guys who have come over from the Giants. Obviously the Devils and the Cannons both have high quality lineups anyway, so they've got their kind of established guys that they're looking to, they're looking to get playing time as well. So I tell you, I wouldn't want to be a manager of either Edinburgh team this year. I think it's going to be pretty stressful.
I think for a few guys in the Giants, or not the Giants, the Devils, that means it's going to be a little more flexible, knowing there's, enough guys there that they can kind of pop in and out and be casual about it. I think that for a couple of the older guys with kids, I think that's probably ideal for them. And then for the young guys, it's always good to show up week in, week out. I mean, you'll know. I mean, you played your first season more for the Cannons than you did for your
That's true. Yeah.
So, so it's just getting that opportunity to play every day, and I think that will hurt in the short term, but hopefully in the long term that it builds confidence in the guys to know that when they can crack that lineup, they've made it, and hopefully they'll be able to build on that and strength to strength, and then you bounce back in the season and find another 10 guys who are keen on playing, and then you start up again with the next season, and then you've got the Giants back.
Yep, hope to see the Giants back as soon as possible, hopefully next season, which will obviously be the earliest that they'll be able to come back at this point. It's unfortunate to lose them because they're always fun to play against. Guys like, especially Kyle Huffey, I find him to be an entertaining guy to be around. So yeah, it's sad to see them go. But 7 teams will be playing this year. Both Glasgow teams are coming back. The Edinburgh Cannons and Devils, as we've said, both Aberdeen teams will be looking to build on their excellent progress that they've been making. And obviously the new team, the Tayport Breakers. Do you think it's possible any of the Edinburgh Giants guys might defect to Tayport?
I don't think there's anybody in the area that is playing up there, but then I don't know. So I think Tayport's just a little bit too far away that there's maybe one guy you can think of top of my head that might join the club if he doesn't know about it already, but I think they'll all stay in that.
Right. No worries, man. Did you get a chance to see the schedule yet?
I did look at it, and I did notice one glaring thing.
And what would that be?
And that would be that they're playing during the London series. So they had quite a bit of stuff on, but they didn't take the weekend off for the London series.
Oh, yeah, I did notice that, actually. I found that kind of weird. Do you think that that's been just an oversight, or have you had any contact from Paul to kind of explain that at all?
I haven't talked to Paul yet, but I do know there was, 4 different tournaments going on this season.
There's a lot of. I think the ladies are going to be going to Sheffield apparently for a tournament and stuff. So it's not just us blokes that are travelling this year. So there's a lot of different pieces to move around. It could just be that it's going to be reviewed after kind of dates are finalised for certain things, and then we'll move some things around. But yeah, I did find that kind of odd that we're scheduled for games on the London series weekend. I don't think that the league would. I don't see that being something the league would want to do, to be honest.
No, I think it might have been just an oversight, because I think guys will definitely want to watch the game. There may not be going to the game, but you're definitely going to watch the game. So you'll be able to watch the Saturday game, no problem. And then the Sunday, I think, is the early game. I think it's that 1 o'clock game, isn't it? 2 o'clock game. So I think it's just an oversight. I think they have a lot of stuff going on, and I understand. I did league schedule for 10 plus years, and I know how hard it is to get everything to work out, but not screw it up too badly. So,
yep. Let's take a quick look at the schedule itself, and let's take a quick look at the opening day fixtures. So we've got the 29th of March this year is the opening day. Curiously, both the Oilers and Express have an off day that day. I'm wondering why that is. I mean, if both of them are off, then surely it would make sense to have the two of them open the season against each other. But it could well be that their field is in use for something else on that date, and it's just one of those necessities of life.
Now, I know when I did the schedule, probably the last year I did it, there was snow in Aberdeen.
Okay, so it might just be a precaution with regards to the weather.
Yeah, that might be what it be, because you're talking the first week of April. There's a good chance there might be snow, but hey, I mean, there's been snow in Edinburgh all week long, so you never know.
My guys, the Glasgow Comets, are travelling to Edinburgh to face your old team, the Edinburgh Cannons, on opening day. We've had some pretty entertaining games early in seasons against the Cannons in previous years, so that's one to look forward to for sure.
So yeah, it should be a good season. I'm looking forward to actually be able to catch a few games this year and pop down and talk to the guys and just see the growth that's happening and just the amount of new players that I don't even know right now that are playing.
Do you think that you'll make it along to the season opener against the Comets?
I might have that weekend open. It's school break So I guess I got to figure out when school break is because they're going on holiday and I'm having a holiday to myself.
Nice one. We might need to hook up and get a drink together.
Absolutely, I'll take the Dugout Classic Road Show over to Glasgow, and we can go hang out.
Other opening day games, Devils are travelling to Glasgow to play the champion Galaxy. That should be a good game. And the Tayport Breakers have opening day off. They open their season against us, actually, the Comets.
Oh, wow. Is it a home game or is it a away game?
At Glasgow. It's our home opener on the 5th of April.
All right. Oh, that's fantastic. That's going to be a big one for them.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see them in person, and it's going to be an interesting season. Obviously, last year we had the Aberdeen Express join the league. They didn't have any kind of rookie nerves whatsoever. They stormed through the year and ended up finishing, I think, second in the league. Very talented bunch of men and women in that squad. Hopefully, Tayport will exhibit similar and continue to grow the quality of the league. Absolutely.
So I know Jason reached out to me, and we're going to get him on the podcast here real soon, and he can tell us what he thinks about his team and how the recruiting process has been to get enough guys to put a team together up there.
That's brilliant. Hopefully we'll get him on very soon, and it's going to be great to chat with him. I only had limited interactions with Jason back when he was a Galaxy player, but he always seems like a class act.
Yeah, I picked up that he was an American guy playing first base the first time, and I was like, "Where are you from?" And yeah, he does have a very thick Mississippian accent, I believe. It was good chat at first base. I'm wishing him all the best for this year.
Awesome, man. Now let's head on. Let's move on to our interview for this week. It's actually part one of a two-parter. We have Danny Quinn. Finally, a Glasgow Comet is coming on the show. My outfield partner, Danny Quinn, will be joining us. And it was a two-part interview that we recorded a few days ago. It was initially going to be just one part, but it ended up he told some fantastic stories, and we ended up chatting for almost an hour. So it's split in half.
Great. Yeah, it was really nice chatting to him. It was a good conversation, and an hour flew by.
Yeah, he's an absolute gentleman, and he's a fantastic player, and always willing to help other players around him as well with tips and hints. He played extensively as a youth, despite the fact that last year was his rookie season in the league. He is quite an experienced player, and he always played. He always gave 100% effort every game.
Let's bring him on.
Yep. Here's part one.
Hey, Danny, nice to meet you. Glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for that, Jason. Nice to meet you too, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I've been listening in, and it's just been really good to get this kind of coverage on the sport in Scotland.
Welcome to the show, Danny. Thank you very much for joining us, brother. It's good to finally have a comment on the show.
Yeah, this is your first one, isn't it?
You are indeed. So
and a Yankee fan, John, and a Yankee fan.
And a Yankee fan as well.
I can see that you guys hung out a lot during the season. I got a feeling about that.
Yeah. Most of the season was spent by Danny covering up my mess in left field.
And a few of the collisions, man. We had a couple of collisions on the field, which was pretty good, man. So.
We did. We'll cover that in depth later. Now, why don't you start by talking us through how you became involved with baseball originally? Because I know that you were a player as a youngster, Danny, and you took a lengthy period out of the game before you came back last year and casually won Rookie of the Year at centre field. You played as a youngster. How, first off, did you become interested in the sport of baseball?
I mean, I was always grew up interested in sports. I think for me growing up, I really had to struggle to find my sport because I didn't take to football the way other people did. I just didn't have the appetite for it that many people at my age when I was in primary school, that sort of 5 to 12-year-old. I loved running, but couldn't get into that. So when I got into high school, I just started, the sort of exploded up, and I kind of explored what kind of sports I may like, So I done rugby, and I done boxing, I done 100-metre sprint. I done basketball, but then the growth spurt didn't really come on the way I hoped it would at that age, so I kind of had to give that up. And then just when I was about 14 years old, my cousin said to me that, we went to the same school, and he said he went to an after-school class for baseball. And it just never occurred to me before to ever even explore that as an option. And I was like, baseball? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, just immediately, I just thought that sounded really cool, like what I knew of the sport was there was batting involved and there was throwing involved, and I was like, well, I'd really keen to explore that. But the person that was in, Kenny Parent, had only done a one-off session in the school, but he'd left some flyers about. So I was maybe about 14 years old, and I phoned him up and found out that he was running clubs in nearby Rutherglen on a Monday night. So I went out to play in the club, and I was just obsessed with it immediately. Just the little things that probably most people take for granted now, like the smell of a fresh glove or the feel of the ball in the hands. And, I just became obsessed with it. And it got to a point where when I was that age, I went to training on a weekly basis. And but for me, I was playing every night. I was rounding up people in my neighbourhood to come and give it a go, and there was maybe about 10 or 15 of us at the time that were just going out to the park and playing. Or if I couldn't do that, I was practicing pitching out the back of my parents' garden. So yeah, I just became hooked on it immediately, and I played maybe 3-4 years before I gave it up again. So that's about it.
Now,
really.
as a youngster, what you pitch a little as well as playing mostly outfield. As a youngster, what's your favourite thing to do? Do you prefer pitching or do you prefer fielding?
Well, I always preferred. Actually, all my every game I played as a youngster, I was pitcher. I played third base for a game or two. This was the first season that I played outfield, so I kind of had to learn to track fly balls and that because it wasn't something I was comfortable in doing. But for all those 3 years, I originally wanted to play catcher, but I was told that I had a good arm, so I was going to play pitcher. And then, in defiance to that, I kind of learned to throw the knuckleballs. I just, much to my coach's dismay, I just persisted in throwing knuckleballs for 90% of my pitches because I got put on there on the premise of my arm being good, but I just slowed it right down by about 20 mile an hour. So, I grew to love pitching. I do love pitching. But I've just really enjoyed playing centre field this year. It's been incredible. I think it may be. I may like it even more than pitching, to be honest.
Now, you mentioned that you picked up last year after a lengthy time out. Was it 13, 14 years you were out of the game?
14 years, yeah.
So what led to you drifting away from the sport for that long?
So I played in the South Lanarkshire League, which was a sort of pony league. And by the time I reached 16, 17, I could no longer play in that league. So I went and I got a BS UK coaching certificate to do coaching for South Lanarkshire Council. But then I found out that I wasn't really interested in coaching at all. I just wanted to play. So it came around the time of, I wasn't really sure I wanted to go over to the Glasgow team because we'd been playing against the Glasgow team. And as a young kid, I suppose, at that age, I kind of thought stupidly, naively, that I wouldn't really be welcome there. And then, just life got in the way. I was doing lots of different things. I was going to college. I had kids a few years later. And it just sort of drifted out my mind. And I never really thought about the sport at all over the next few years. It's only been over the past 5 years or so that I've really been interested in getting back, but I've just not been able to commit to it until last year.
Yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from with kids. Like I said, I just have my kids, and that kind of like end of my career. I'm kind of hoping maybe there might be a comeback, but and that takes me.
I guess with baseball, it's different from like football or rugby or something else, because you're not asking for 2 hours out the house. You're asking for a full day, from the wife to go out there and sit for 5-6 hours, or even more if you're travelling to Aberdeen. So it's a big commitment with young children.
Yeah, that was my biggest complaint to the wife. And not only that, I was sore for like 3 days. And so it's like, I can't even play with the kids because like everything hurts. It's a big commitment, and that's always the toughest part about playing baseball here. Because like yourself, we find guys would play when they're under teens, and then maybe at 16 or 18 they go to uni or start working, and they just forget about the game and work for a couple of years, and then you find yourself more settled, a bit of income, and then you're kind of going, I really miss that. Camaraderie with everyone, just the chat, throwing the ball around. Even if you're a Yankee fan, you can still chalk to Red Sox fans.
Yeah, absolutely. It was weird to have, like, it dominated my sort of childhood so heavily. The sport, like, we would play every single day, and it just I really missed it when I gave it up, and then you just sort of drift away from it, I guess, like other things. And but once you're back, like when I got a chance to come back last year, my appetite is insatiable for the sport just now. I'm sitting here with a baseball game on on pause just now to do this podcast.
So which game are you watching? The game or are you playing? Because I know John likes.
Oh, I'm playing it on the PlayStation. I've got a few careers on it. I'm doing the road to the show, and I've just signed for the Cleveland Indians. So I've just turned down a bigger contract from the Boston Red Sox to sign a smaller contract with the Indians. Stayed true to the Yankee roots.
I was drafted by the Yankees in Road to the Show.
It's a great game, man. Like, yeah. I remember the old school games and they weren't as good, but this is it's only show 18 I've got, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very immersive. Now, before we go down an entirely different rabbit hole on video games, do you have any particularly happy memories or highlights from that original period that you were playing?
Yeah, there's a few. So we went over to play in Ireland, and it was a tournament style thing in 2005. Now, there's something really interesting about that, in that it was a year I was sitting my 5th year exams, and I was doing really well in English, and the English exam coincided with the baseball tournament, and I made the decision, and I told my teacher for my higher English that I wasn't going to do the exam because I wanted to go to Ireland and play baseball, and she was just incensed with me throwing that away. And what ended up transpiring in that year was I became the first person in the country to sit the English exam, and I sat it at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I sat it in my head teacher's office with just an invigilator. Is that what they're called? An invigilator, and myself, and a clock, and I done the English exam, and then I had to be transported by somebody from the SQA over to Edinburgh Airport, where my coach had to sign that I wouldn't speak to anyone about the exam. It was the most bizarre thing ever, but we went over to Ireland and we done the tournament, and I think I pitched most of the games there, and that was just an incredible experience. But the setup that it was in 2005, 2006 was you were maybe playing 2 or 3 competitive games a year. You weren't getting a lot of games whatsoever. So training dominated most of my memories. It's much better now. There's a structure, there's regular games, when you're playing, who you're playing. It's just good to get that routine that wasn't there when I was playing originally.
So shout out to any of the former players that you used to play with back in the day to see if they wanted to come join you in Glasgow.
Oh, so former players coming to join in Glasgow. So the people who I was playing with were usually based in Lesmahago, which is a good distance from Glasgow. I was from Coatbridge. I'm actually probably closer to the Tollcross field in Glasgow, but I went to South Lanarkshire because I wasn't aware that there was anything in Glasgow. I don't keep in touch with a lot of the people who I was playing with competitively, though I still do keep in touch with the people I was playing with more on a social basis. Always trying to get people involved. I brought a friend along to the tail end of the season last year and shared that about on Facebook a few times and things like that. But I actually, as much as I love getting new people involved, you know, I often feel when you get someone new to the game and you're trying to show them the ropes, you need to kind of throw slow, you need to not bat as hard, you need to really take your, you know, not, I don't feel as if I get a good training session when, you know, I'm bringing along people that need to be shown a lot. So as much as I love saying, let's go and get involved, I like to go to training and I like to play with people that throw harder than me and bat harder than me because I like to learn off them, you know. So, yeah, I think definitely there's room for promoting it better. Certainly round little towns that I'm from, like Airdrie and Coatbridge and things like that, and just showing people that, you know, there is a baseball diamond out in Tollcross, just at a very central place, and there's an opportunity to learn the sport and develop in it.
No, I said is you're doing a good job of promoting the sport, even if, you know, you're bringing people along. But I can totally understand where you're coming from. Like you're at training and you want to train and you want to get better.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the main thing. It's great to learn the sport, and the social element of it is great. But I think with most guys and most teams in here, we are all very competitive and want to play the sport for fun, but also kind of want to win and develop and get better at what we're doing. Everybody seems really passionate about the sport and getting better at it.
So Danny, let's move on then to this past season, the 2019 season. Officially your rookie season in the Scottish National League as a Glasgow Comet. As we've covered before, it was a successful one for you on a personal level. It was another year of improvement for the Comets as a team as well. I think the current lineup is beginning to really gel. There have been some alterations to the structure of the Comets over the off season that I'm not entirely sure how much of that we can get into on the show before it's made kind of public. But
yeah.
You know, it's been a long time out of the game for you. Take me back to the run up to opening day 2019. How did you get back in touch with baseball, and how did it come to be that you ended up a Comet?
Well, the past few years, I think the past 2 years previous to last year, I turned up for the opening winter training, and that was it. I didn't go by that opening winter training, and so I was there 2017 and 18. In 2019, I was like, you know, I keep going back to this, and I keep really wanting to do the sport again and learn the sport again and learn from people. And so on the night of the first training, I sort of saw it was on Facebook and where it was. And it's very close to the office where I work. So I said to Jenna, my partner, I says, I'm going to go along and I'm going to stick it out this season, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to learn the game again and give myself the opportunity to enjoy it, not just walk out after the first or second training session after you feel like you haven't done that great. So I obviously came along to winter training, and I went to it with a very open mind of, you know, I haven't played in a long time. And there was a sort of fear there for me personally, in that I could go back and I might not enjoy it, and it completely ruins every memory that I have of enjoying it through my teenage years and things like that. Or I could go back and be totally rubbish and, you know, have my ego damaged by thinking I was actually somewhat of a good player when I was, you know, 16, 17. So I just went along with an open mind to learn from everyone in the room and learn about, you know, the game again, starting from the very basics. And what I will say is the guys in Glasgow were just so incredibly welcoming from both the Galaxy and the Comets. It was just anybody that was coming in, myself included. just taking their time out to show you things and show you, go through the fundamentals again and take an interest in whether you've played the game before and what you want to learn and things like that. So, it really started to ramp up. Obviously, I think we started in February with our winter training last year, and it turned to spring very, very quickly. And it just so happened that the Comets had a sort of opening in centre field, I guess you could say. I know that John Nelson used to play centre field for the Comets as well as pitcher and things like that. So it was kind of suggested to me that there could be a spot at centre field, and because I'm quite fast on my feet, I guess that it might be a position that I was interested in. So I really just took to trying out that position and found out that I really, really enjoyed the outfield, and especially centre field. And yeah, kicked off the season with the Comets. And what's really good about the Comets team is that there's lots of potential in it. There was guys like myself and Andy Vaughan and Gordon and things, and Craig was there too. And these are all guys that are, don't have a ton of experience as much as the likes of Gio and Louis and Albert and things like that. But we're all very keen to develop. And there's a real team spirit and a real willingness to learn the game and develop through that and take on the advice of, I suppose the two Glasgow clubs, both the Galaxy and the Comets. So it was just been a really great season. I've really enjoyed every single minute of it, and especially learning a new position and things like that. It's been really challenging, but it's just, again, it's helped me just develop a deeper love for the game.
So, Daniel, you learned a new position for this season, and you wound up excelling in it. I don't think that even Gio anticipated how well you were going to take to centre field when he asked you to take that position up. What would you attribute your success in centre field to this year?
I think just the nature of the outfield. I struggled when we progressed to outfield training, outdoor training and tracking the fly balls and things like that. But when you have people like yourself and like Andy and like Gordon who are calling you on to go shorter or deeper, it's that communication in the outfield. It just made the job really, really easy. I can run. I'm comfortable running at a decent speed, but getting to the ball isn't always the hardest part. It's judging the depth of it or judging whether you need to go back a few steps, and just having an outfield that really communicates. I feel like we had one of the strongest outfields in the league this year, just by the looks of it. I don't feel we had a lot of drop balls. I feel like, if anything, we had more collisions than drop balls because we both tracked it at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I feel like I just felt really comfortable in that position, and took a lot of time to learn it from guys who had been doing it for a little while. And obviously Gio had a ton of experience in different positions on the field. So I guess the moral of that, or what really helped me more than anything, was just the communication between the other team members in the outfield to really help me. It just made me feel really comfortable out there.
So that was part one of our interview with Danny Quinn of the Glasgow Comets. Again, a great guy. Part two coming next week. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. Now, moving on and to close up for this episode, Jason, we don't have a this day in baseball history. You've been taking a bit of a break from your other activities to kind of focus on the launch of something that we'll keep under wraps until next week on the podcast. It's been announced that it's open for business. It's your new jersey store, Dugout Classics. We'll talk about that in depth next time. But we do have one from just a couple of days ago that I think that bears mentioning. The 100th anniversary back on Thursday of the establishment of the Negro Leagues. Now, as an American and as a lifelong baseball fan, what do the Negro Leagues mean to you? Obviously, as a baseball historian as well, of a sort.
it was segregation times, and it's a real shame because you hear the stories of Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and some of the stories these guys were told of how amazing they were and just couldn't get into the major leagues is a shame. But it's great that it's been documented. And it still lives on. I know there was a huge exhibition in Kansas City at the Negro League Museum. I saw a couple artists I follow on Instagram were there. The president of the Negro Leagues on Twitter, and he had posted some stuff there. So if you're ever in Kansas City, like you should check it out. Like I've only heard amazing things about it. It's supposed to blow your mind on some of the stuff that they have. 100 years ago on the Thursday, the Negro Leagues were created. So yeah, that's crazy. I think 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a long time ago, but when you look at it in terms of what the Negro Leagues actually represent, it leaves a bit of a sour taste, doesn't it? It's only been 100 years ago that black men were not permitted to play baseball in the major leagues alongside whites. Especially, I think we've been kind of lucky in our lifetime that we've seen some incredible black athletes. A Ricky Henderson, a Barry Bonds, regardless of what you think of his extracurricular activities.
No, but it was interesting because I do a lot of my research every day to find something out, and it was something came up that in gosh, I want to say it was Georgia, and they had passed a bill, even though the major leagues had been segregated for 10 years, that black men were not allowed to play against white men or play with white men unless it was a religious ceremony. And this was 10 years after the major leagues have been, opened up to, and I was like, wow, that's crazy to think that, that it was no longer segregated, and they were passing bills in Alabama or like that. I'll have to figure it out. But yeah, that they weren't allowed to play.
That is a great example, I think, of the purifying force that baseball can be and has been at times in American history. Sometimes it takes baseball to make a move for the country to then warm to it, and I think that's another fine example of why baseball is America's pastime and why it is so important to the country. When you look at our time and the people and the players that we've seen play in our lifetimes, it almost doesn't bear even imagining what Major League Baseball would be like if that were still the case, if we had never gotten a chance to grow up watching these athletes, just because of absolute nonsense as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to look at the first Japanese guy to break in was I'm gonna totally blunder his name. I think it's Mahashu Magani or something. But he pitched for the Giants in 1965, and it took till 1995 for Hideo Nomo to be the second Japanese player to play in the major leagues, and that's not due to segregation. That's just it takes that much talent to actually make it in the pros.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think Hideo Nomo opened a lot of Japanese eyes to Major League Baseball and vice versa. That obviously opened the door for guys like was it Sasaki who pitched for the Mariners?
Yep, the Mariners did that. Max Sasaki and Koji Jujima, and of course Ichiro, and then of course on your side you've got Matsui.
Hideki Matsui, certainly, yep, and obviously Shohei Ohtani, Masahiro Tanaka. They are becoming more and more. There are more and more Japanese players who are kind of breaking into the big leagues, and they have some of them are, certainly in the case of Ichiro, some of the best players in Major League history.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's insane that Ichiro's gotten 3,000 hits in the major leagues, despite the fact starting out he was 27 when he was first.
This is right, yeah. And to go back to the Negro League point, obviously the home run king for a very long time was a black man, Hank Aaron. He was surpassed by another black man, Barry Bonds. It's frightening to think that 100 years ago that wouldn't have happened.
No. Hate to say different times, but I'm glad to see it's we're seeing the best of the best on the field, regardless of color and race.
This is it. Let's move on from that from that kind of gloomy subject, and we'll close up for the day. Where can people find you on social media, and what's the Dugout Classics website again?
So you can find me on all 3 social media channels at Bubba on Baseball. And then if you're looking to get some vintage jerseys or some modern day players, I have a few of those. It's dugoutclassics.com, or you can follow again on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and it's Dugout Classics.
And you can catch me on Twitter at John Caps Pipes, at John CAPSPIPES. Obviously, you can catch the podcast on Facebook or Twitter it's at Ball Caps and Bagpipes. Just search that on Twitter or Facebook, and certainly you can hear the show wherever you get your podcasts from. Just search Ball Caps and Bagpipes once again. And we're pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, we are. We're slowly everywhere.
Big shout out to the Two Strike Noise guys again. Also the British Baseball Podcast. We've heard great feedback from Scottish Blue Jays fans on Twitter as well, so I want to give a quick shout out to them. And one last shout out to my friend Alistair Brown. Thanks to Mr. Brown, and I'm sure you'll be thrilled to hear this, Jason. I am officially a Seahawks fan.
Yay! All right. Now we just have to get you a jersey. So
yeah, we play Madden. We dick around on Madden from time to time, and he's a diehard Seahawks fan. And I guess it's just kind of rubbed off.
So are you going to go with Russell Wilson then as your favorite player then, since he has a contract with?
I think by default I have to go with Russell Wilson. DK Metcalf seems like a unit as well, so he's certainly one to watch.
Yeah, that Seahawks are fun. Like I said, I'm hoping they have a better season than last year. But you never know. Like the contracts play. And how who you're able to retain.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be watching. Hopefully we'll be in a bar round about this time next year watching the Seahawks in the Super Bowl together.
Well, if the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, there's a good chance I could be at the Super Bowl.
All right, man. Let's close it there. You have anything else you want to add?
No, that's it for this week.
Cool, man. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be back next week with part 2 of Danny's interview. Sorry for how haphazard this has been. We effectively we recorded the show all in one when we recorded the interview, and then ended up having to split it into 2 parts. So we're kind of throwing this together last minute to get it out. So part 1, this one. Part 2 out next week. Until then, be good and have a great week.
Next week.